Have we started?
Oh, we're recording, yeah.
Okay.
Let me get ready. Trying to think of how I'm going to bring it in. No, I don't want to fuck up the thing and have to redo it again. Welcome to our final public access on the Atlantis series. We'll have other public accesses, but this is the kind of seasonal wrap up that we're doing for Atlantis. I'm John the Elder, here with Kay.
Hi.
And John the Younger.
Yo.
And so what we're going to kind of do here is just kind of talk about, this was our first time doing any sort of content like this. We decided that we were just going to do this thing. And we jumped in with Atlantis. You kind of had the idea to do Atlantis. Was there a reason why you were like, let's do Atlantis first?
No, just basically it was just so cut and dry. The fact that we know the exact origin of the story of Atlantis, and we know the exact starting point of its entry into American pop culture. Like there's very rarely things where you can pinpoint the exact origins of myths and the exact origins of the misinformation regarding that myth. Atlantis was one where you can say it came exactly from this place, and the American pop culture version came exactly from this place.
I think one of the things that I wanted to do whenever you initially pitched this idea to me for Story Beneath was to show how these myths have like a bigger impact like throughout history. And this one really shows because it goes from ancient Greece, and we didn't get into modern day. We kind of stopped at World War II, but it literally goes from ancient Greece to World War II. Like the impact of it does. And you don't realize that there's this thread in this myth that goes all the way through that. And it really does show how these myths evolve, how some of them are essentially the same or how they have the same elements. And it also lets you set apart the ones that are actually really creative.
Yeah, it's like in the short I did for one of our episodes, I compared Donnelly. I've compared his book, The Antediluvian World, and its relevance to Plato to Dante's relevance to the Bible. Like it got conflated. It was inspired by the original work, but it's been conflated with it so much over time that they're sort of indistinguishable.
Is there anything that like I'm trying to think of something I was like surprised by with Atlantis as we were kind of going through it? Like super surprised by. I kind of already knew like the linguist stuff. Vaguely, I have a better grasp on that now and how they manipulate this idea of the evolution of language to create like some sort of superiority. John the Younger, is there anything that you were like, this is Atlantis shit? Like I had no idea.
Not necessarily on the Atlantis part. I was pretty familiar with not the text, I guess, but I was pretty familiar with the myth and where it all came from and how it got popularized before we went into it. But thing that did surprise me is Donnelly as a person and his other works of art. I was not expecting him to be as creative as he was, and especially with one of the books we talked about in the podcast, it's something that I feel should legitimately be taught in history class.
Yeah, Donnelly was a surprising figure. My opinion of him changed a lot over the course of the research and reading his stuff.
Yeah, me as well.
I think there's probably a lot of men and women like Donnelly throughout history. It's just we got into this niche subject and found this gentleman and dug into him and found this out about him. I bet you if we looked around for other figures during this time, there were people, who these kind of counter ideas throughout their life. Like it does seem counterintuitive, his theory on Atlantis being real, and then also his views on race, I guess. Like,
yeah,
does that make sense? Like, because he does seem to have a progressive view of race, at least for the time.
Yes.
Yeah. No one was saying these cultures were equal. It was about integration, and that seems offensive today. But back then, that was the progressive view.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was interesting to find that out, like about Donnelly as a human being.
he seemed like every person and had a lot of conflicting ideas and conflicting moralities within himself. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of the times with history and learning about people through history, you lose that these are people. You know what I mean? And I feel like doing this subject on Donnelly really helped me see him as a person more than a history figure.
One thing I was kind of surprised by is what Plato actually said about Atlantis. Because I think I said this to you guys probably multiple times, but once I actually read it, I was more certain that a lot of these people who honestly talk about Atlantis never actually did.
Yeah, you read the whole boring ass thing. Like you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not Plato specifically, Donnelly too, but Plato specifically, because Timaeus, which was the first one that it's in, it's the one with all the lore and stuff. But when he gets into Critias, the one that's extremely detailed, the one that's actually, like, all of Critias is about Atlantis. Timaeus, it's just the first few pages or so. Well, not the first few pages, it's just a few pages out of the whole thing. There's virtually no lore in it. He just gets into minutia of the society, like the architecture.
He's world building.
Yeah, it's...
We talked about this when we did the public access just overplayed it. But yeah, he is world building.
Yeah,
he
and
is doing... Oh, sorry.
So the actual lore, there's not much there. The actual story, there's virtually nothing to it.
Yeah. He's doing what a lot of artists do, and they find something to hyperfixate on. They hyperfixate on a piece of art that they're making and over world build, get bored of that world, and then stop making it. It is a very common thing with artists.
To me, it felt like, and I have no way of knowing this for sure, it felt like there was kind of a gap between when he wrote Timaeus and Critias, or at the very least, by the time he got done with Timaeus, he had sort of shifted, because the tone of the two, with regards to Atlantis, is just so significantly different.
That's interesting. That's something that you would only know because me and the Elder have not read the books.
So, and I talked about it in the podcast, but Timaeus, again, it's just briefly about Atlantis, and then he goes into, like, it's just pages and pages and pages of his cosmology. Like, that bit of Timaeus is longer than, I believe, is longer than all of Critias. So, maybe by the time he got done with that, he was in a different headspace and was writing differently, but the two were just so different from one another. It was kind of surprising to me.
Beyond kind of what we covered, so like beyond even like the Nazis, I started seeing Atlantis all over the place. You know, what is it called? Yeah. Is it like a psychological thing?
I know
like,
exactly.
Once you know more about it, you see it like everywhere.
Yeah.
So you see these Lost City stuff. It pops up on your YouTube channel. Of course, algorithms help with that because we're researching this. But even guests like Joe Rogan spouting conspiracy theories, the Graham Hancock Netflix series we ran into. I think it's important to talk about that it is really impossible post-Plato to separate into today, post-Plato into the modern time, to separate kind of pseudo-race science from the Atlantis myth. People try to do it and try to keep race out of it, like the Graham Hancock series where he's saying this is like some lost civilization. And I know people are saying this is like a slippery soap argument. I'm saying that we can't talk about Atlantis because that's inherently racist. But it's not a slippery soap argument because the whole idea of Atlantis and the way it's presented is not a slippery slope away. It's literally one logical step into a direction of being
It's a
racist.
goose step away. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and to clarify, Plato's version of it wasn't racist in any way. He never brings race into it at all. But all the stuff that came after that, it's at least of any significance that gets repeated in our culture, is significantly tied to race. And I'll use Graham Hancock for instance. I genuinely do not think that he is racist. I genuinely don't. I firmly think that he is not a racist. I've never seen anything from him that gives me reason to believe he is. But the ideas he talks about are intrinsically racist, no matter how much he tries to separate them.
Well,
and he does.
Because the ideas come from racists.
Yes. And He tries to, Alex said, I mentioned it in one of the podcasts when I was talking about the white gods pseudo history. I've heard him talk about that before. And he just hand waves the sort of Spanish conquistador element. He just sort of hand waves it and just dismisses it.
I would say that you're not in good company when white nationalists prescribe to the same sort of pseudo history and pseudo scientific theories that you have and beliefs that you have, for different reasons, maybe, but it's not good company to keep.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem with the conversation around Atlantis is guys like Graham Hancock, who, again, I'll say it again, don't think he's racist, but he does spout these inherently racist ideas. And rather than acknowledging what they're rooted in and just straight out saying, yes, it is rooted in these, this was a mistake on their part, this was wrong, he just hand waves it.
Right. If he addressed like that element of it as opposed to completely ignoring it and pushing it to the side or just dismissing it outright, if he presented it in a way of like, okay, let's try to talk about this way, like maybe we could take it a little more seriously.
Yeah, I think at least it doesn't help his credibility that he's not willing to address it head on, I think.
Agreed, but I don't think it matters. I think even if this had no intrinsic link to racism or white gods or anything like that, it would still be objectively wrong in something that we need to combat.
So if we push the race issue to the side, it's still bad science and bad archaeology, in general.
Yeah, and it's another thing. After reading Plato, I sat there and I read everything Atlantis related, which is, it's not much. Literally the only, no matter what anyone says, those are the two only sources of Atlantis in all of recorded human history. They are. That is just a fact.
It's not the earliest. It is the only.
Yes, the only
source.
It appears in no cultures throughout the world, not in Egyptian culture, not at all. Doesn't appear in Greek culture anywhere. Atlantis supposedly had a reach across the entire world, Native Americans, Central Americans, but there is nothing Atlantis related in any of their cultures or histories or mythologies.
Besides pyramids.
Well, pyramids retroactively get involved.
Yeah, kind of semi-pyramids. They're triangular structures.
They don't bring pyramids back up again until the 1900s or late 1800s. So
yeah, and that's the thing. When I actually read the one sole source on Atlantis, I was like, there's no possible way this could be true. Even just reading it, with my basic, whatever understanding, like, I'm college educated, but let's be honest, you forget a lot of stuff you learn over time. But you just need basic, like, elementary geography and history and archaeology to understand,
know what he's saying.
Yeah, that this is just a story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, he doesn't even get his timelines correct in the story.
Right, we talked about that. How like he like. But yeah, he's like, so doesn't he say at one point Egypt does this, but then like he goes back and it's like Egypt didn't exist. They're the same time. He says they did something. It's something along those lines.
What he says toward the beginning is that Athens was founded about 9,000 years ago. He says this in Critias. And then Egypt was founded about 8,000. This is relative to Plato's time. So 8,000 years before Plato is when Egypt was started by, I can't remember the name of the goddess, the Athena counterpart. And so Egypt in 8,000 years prior and Athens 9,000 years prior. So Egypt didn't exist till 8,000 years prior. But he specifically says the war in which Athens defeated, he says this in Critias, the war in which Athens defeated Atlantis took place 9,000 years ago. And he specifically mentions Egypt as one of the places that Atlantis had conquered.
Needed better pre-planning. He should have outlined.
Well, again, I think goes back to what we said earlier. He wrote that part in Critias, and then he went through all that cosmology, which was a lot of stuff. So by the time he got back to actually writing his Atlantis story, he just messed up on some of the details. I've seen some Plato fans argue that he did it on purpose,
They pull
What?
the Zack Snyder. They pull the Zack Snyder fans. That's crazy.
The argument being like, so this has a lot of assumptions involved in it. The argument being that he knew it wouldn't sound real if everything was perfect in perfect detail, because he was a smart man. He would have
He's
known
playing 4D chess.
Yeah, he would have known a story passed down through this many people wouldn't be accurate. So he threw in mixed up details to make it sound more real. But that carries the huge assumption that Plato wanted anyone to think that this was a real story and not just an allegory, which there is no reason to think that he did.
All right. At the risk of being redundant, we have hours of content on Plato and Donnelly. So we're going to move on to some stuff that we learned from the technical aspect of content creation.
Yeah.
Lots of trial and error with sound. We think we've got it worked out, or this may sound terrible, and we'll keep getting better every single time with sound. That was a fun run.
Yeah, we think we've got it figured out. And to anyone who does listen to our stuff, we know there's a lot of issues in some of the stuff. Some of the stuff we haven't put out yet that we've already recorded is going to have some of those issues as well. So we took this. We didn't originally intend for this to be a season. We're calling it sort of a season.
Mm-hmm.
But this was all supposed to be just, let's just jump in and figure it out as we go. We're figuring it out. We have learned some stuff that we're going to take forward from now on. Hopefully, how to properly use microphones is one of those lessons.
And editing, like, I know guys, like, listen, editing takes a lot of time. Editing the audio, editing videos. I mean, it takes 2 or 3 hours to edit a 5-minute short video to make it feel like it has movement and things like that. So I do kind of apologize that, I guess, like, not apologize, but the editing, we're going to keep trying to get better at everything that we're doing. And, some of the longer content we have, some of the stuff that, like these podcasts, we're kind of casually talking that get into the hour and a half territory, I'm getting better at editing those and doing it in a timely manner. And I know some of the early ones don't have a lot of life to them. I'm trying to improve on that as well, by learning how to use different elements and things like that to save myself some time to make that feel more like a video that you're also watching. Eventually we'll have cameras. That's a plan. But first we got to get,
Yeah. Another thing we learned is how to talk on a podcast. Because we have a tendency to like talk over one another, and
what the fuck do you mean?
we kind of learned you need to just talk one at a time while you're doing stuff like this. It makes it much easier to edit, for one. And when you're experimenting with how to set up audio, it makes it much easier to not have terrible audio if you're not talking over each other. Which brings me to another thing that I learned. Subtitles are hard, and they take a long time.
Yeah. How long did it take you to subtitle just Story Beneath? Just the 30-minute Story Beneath video, which, by the way, guys, when going back to that anything, Story Beneath is always going to be our baby. It's the thing that we're going to take the most time on always. So that's going to improve, I think, the most between episodes for sure. But anyways, how long did it take you to do the...
So it was the first one that I did, so I was figuring stuff out as I went, but about 6 hours.
That's crazy.
And here's the thing. I try to do all the shorts. I'll get to them.
Can we just cure deafness, maybe? Instead of doing that? Seems like that would take less time. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, I try to do all the shorts, and I tend to get to them when I can. I don't usually get to them before they're posted, but maybe in the future that's something I'll be able to do. As for the podcast episodes, I did try, but I'm not going to sub them because, again, the issue I talked about before, us talking over each other and everything, it's a nightmare to do.
And there's some usually just like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Like, that is a monumental task to...
Yeah, the problem with us is there's 3 of us talking, so separating three people in the text gets a little, wonky or difficult.
Anything else from like the technical aspect of this that John the Younger?
Yeah, I think we should add. Well, our ideas for this have changed very much over time as well. Like what we wanted this to be. Like you mentioned the 1.5 hour, 2 hour podcast. It's something we are actively trying to avoid doing now.
Yeah. If we ever get to a point where we can have an editor, we may just not care anymore because that would be their problem. But right now, everything on here, we're editing it ourselves. So we write it, we record it, we edit it, we do it all ourselves. That may change, it may not. We may get to a point and we decide if there ever does become a point where we can do this full time, we may just say, you know what, we'll still do the editing. But I think one thing we learned, specifically with regards to the story beneath, is we all acknowledge now it was overdone. And we realized that because we literally got to a point where we're like, we just have to stop. Like we were planning to keep working on it for like another month or two. We said, no, we just have to stop. We're done. We just have to stop.
We have to put it to bed.
Yeah. So the next one will be much more streamlined. It'll much less produced, I guess you could call it. Yeah, we're taking some lessons.
It's not going to be overproduced.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're getting better at the beginning part because we did a lot of stuff sort of in the middle section. So while we were editing, we were coming up with ideas and everything like that. With the next one, we're doing all that stuff before anything even gets recorded.
To move on, I wanted to talk about some of the comments. We always appreciate comments on our videos, of course. There was one that we had to delete. Does anyone remember vaguely what it said?
Yeah, it was hippie Hitler shit. I've been in this rabbit hole before.
For those of us who don't know, will you explain what hippie Hitler shit is for us?
It's really yeah, I'll try my best. But again, it's really spiritual. And it's it's very linked with psychedelics. So like if you know anyone who's ever been like a really big psychedelic head, a lot of the shit they say is complete fucking nonsense and doesn't make any sense. So like trying to follow what they're trying to say is hard.
They're usually like connecting different, completely separate ideologies together in a string of what they may think makes sense.
Yes.
But really those ideologies are completely incompatible with one another, and you can't string them together into anything coherent.
Yes.
Anyways, he seemed to have some problematic views of, I believe, Jews and modern Christians.
So, yeah.
So that comment did get deleted. Just so you know, if you come at us with anything like that, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, and also there were two reasons why we deleted it. Crazy ramblings we're not necessarily going to delete. But one, there was a racist slant to it. Oddly, it was racism against white people, against like pagan Nordic people specifically, and there was some insults towards certain religions. Again,
I want to push back on this. I do not think he was saying that white people are the bad guys in those stories. He was saying that they are intrinsically linked to gods. He was saying that white people are superior because they are related to gods.
Yeah, but he literally called them also demons at one point because they're gods.
Because they're gods,
angels and demons is what he's saying.
I thought he was saying like the white people want to be gods, but they're actually demons.
From what unless this is an ideology I have never heard of, that is not what he was saying.
This is harder to follow than like Darren Aronofsky's mother. It's hard to follow.
Well, again, it's because it's intrinsically linked with psychedelics, and nothing they really say makes any sense because they made it up whenever they were.
But anyways, the only reason why I wanted to bring up the comment we deleted was explaining why we kind of deleted it.
Yeah.
And then again, reiterate like we did at the very first episode of Public Access, where we explained our goals and things like that. You're not going to be a racist bigot piece of shit in our comment section. It's just not going to happen.
And said the other one, he was insulting other religions, which again we're not going to. Religion will come up because it's intrinsic. It's just part of some of the things we talk about.
Normally with people like that, though, I think we could keep the comment on and just reply to it and, call him kind of a jackass. But
Maybe.
here's the thing. Here was the problem with that one, in my opinion. It was a direct call to action. What he was trying to do was recruit people into his weird 4chan community. That was his goal with that comment.
And it was like 7 paragraphs.
Yes.
It was long. But yeah, that stuff, there won't be any discussion about racism. If it comes up, it's getting deleted. Do you want to talk about the other comments? Did you want to bring up the ones we got recently?
I did want to do the one about the young lady who messaged about the DNA stuff. I found that kind of interesting and sent us down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, again, those are still up. We don't think what the comments say is correct, but they're still up because there was nothing hateful in them. Factually incorrect, absolutely, but nothing hateful. So they're staying up.
I looked into it a little bit, and from what I understand, it's Mormon, right?
No, so the subject that they commented on, I don't know if it was the picture was, some of the shorts on their channel were obviously AI, so I'm not sure. So I'll say they. They're talking about mitochondrial DNA and the subsets of mitochondrial DNA. It's all real science. The X group of mitochondrial DNA is found in like Eurasia, Middle East, and there is a very, very small percentage of Native Americans from around the Great Lakes area that have the X2 subset of mitochondrial DNA that branched off from the original X subset. A lot of people use that. It comes up with Atlantis theorists and Mormon stuff to think, how is that possible? If humans originated from Russia, how did a mitochondrial subgroup not from Russia end up in the Americas? And a very simple answer for that is, so the numbers that the comment said that they branched out like 13 to 15,000 years ago. Everything I found said that subgroup branched off about 20,000 years ago, which is a few thousand years before the mass human migration to North America started. So to me, the most logical conclusion there is that people from that area migrated toward the Russia area, were probably there for a few generations, and those people eventually migrated to America, and that small subset of mitochondrial DNA just carried with them in a very, very small percentage of Native American population.
That was the explanation we were all looking for.
That's just that's the logical
Yeah.
train for me.
The only other, we did get another recent comment about interlacing in one of our other videos. The interlacing for that video in particular was because it was about AI videos, and the frame rates on the clips that were used were different than what the videos actually produced in when we render it. And that's the only thing that I could think that could cause that weird motion thing that is caused by interlacing that you sometimes get, where the motion looks just a little off. It's not like interlacing like it was back in the day, where it's so bad that anytime someone moves, you get those crazy lines in your TV,
Yeah.
But I did go back and watch it again with a more careful eye and kind of saw what he was saying, especially when it came to the AI videos where the movement looked off, or it was just bad AI.
Is it like that in the one that you rendered before you uploaded it to YouTube?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and compare and contrast.
I read that part of it can be, or just check the original clips, part of it can be like a 720p video being rendered at 1080p.
Right.
They're trying to upscale it.
There's no way for me to go in there. When we do it, I have to make a selection when we render it. I can't render individual clips as we go through.
Yeah.
Because if we have to render the one big video project is one thing. And we use a lot of clips, and we're going to use a lot of clips when we do our shorts and our other videos and things like that. So that's going to happen sometimes, but I promise I'll try my best to get better at that too. Like, we're going to get everything, every video we make, every short that we're going to make, everything that we do, we're going to try to make it better than the last one.
We do appreciate that comment, though, because we might not have noticed that otherwise.
We appreciate all the comments, even the one that was wrong about like mitochondrial DNA. Like, it made us look into something that we had no idea about and learn whether or not that person was correct or not. It made us learn something, and we appreciate that.
And I'll say, we haven't been great about responding to comments. We're going to try and get better at that, being more active in that.
So we were talking about how like this feels like it's the end of a season. This is a wrap up. We're done with Atlantis. Atlantis is behind us. So what kind of? Well, I know what we're doing, but you guys, we kind of like talked about this a lot and the kind of content that we want to put out there, and we've kind of been doing it already. I did the 7 or 8 minute long video on AI video. And then I did the fun little short for Thanksgiving about talking about psychology, just weird little scientific things that help explain these myths that you see in your life, or like these repeating patterns that you see in your life that you don't normally think about, that are just kind of interesting. And where do you guys see the content going forward as like for your guys' vision of what kind of stuff we're going to get into?
Well, experimentation. I think that's the name of the game right now. We're early enough where we don't have an established identity yet. And I think we are pretty free form to just try shit out and just see what works and what doesn't. Like the Halloween podcast we did is a perfect example of that. That was us just getting in a room being like, y'all want to just talk about horror movies for an hour while we have a framework of a quiz show. And so we did it.
And while you guys did not watch the full podcast, the shorts that we made out of that podcast were very, very popular and are most commented on TikTok and Instagram. So,
and I will say there's been sort of a change to the way we do it, because when we first started this, we started worrying about the algorithm and all that stuff. But I think we were at a point where like, let's just make stuff. So we did have a weekly release schedule. That's not going to be the case anymore. Things will just be out when they're out.
I will probably still make something every week because that's just the way my brain works.
Shorts will probably come out weekly,
videos, yeah.
Because we can stockpile those. But you're also going to be, there's going to be more like individual stuff. Like the story beneath, it takes longer because we put more effort into it, but it's also all three of us working on it together.
It is our group project.
Yes. There's and there are a lot of things that, one thing we have come up that we'll talk about in a sec, that again, it involves all three of us. But there will be we're all working on individual things that we will just release on our own. Everyone checks in with each other and we go review each other's stuff, but there will be more just individual stuff that gets put out there too.
Yeah, we all have interests in, I would say, similar aspects of things, but we all have our own subsects and subgroups that we are into of pop culture, and I think we would like to talk about them. And so doing them individually on the channel seems the best way to do it going forward.
Yeah, should we talk about the one that I'm working on right now?
Yeah. Let's tell them what they can expect, what kind of series ideas we have bouncing around in our head.
Yeah, so I'm editing right now. It'll be a series that we'll do just as we feel like doing it, as we need. Might be sort of like, again, we won't have official seasons, but we might have sort of unofficial seasons, and these might come up just in sort of like season breaks. But it's a show that we're calling Is It Really That Bad? We're going to examine a piece of media and that's generally considered bad, and we're going to discuss and decide if it's really that bad. Our first one, the first episode that we're doing, is going to be on Joker Folie à Deux. So we've already recorded it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference between this kind of second phase, or whatever you want to call it, as we leave Atlantis behind. Everything's not going to be so interconnected like our content was last time, all kind of referencing back to Atlantis. We're going to kind of broaden the umbrella out a little bit, because we are, for the next story beneath, doing Missing 411.
Yes, we are.
I believe we announced that at the end of the last public access.
Yes, we
so
did. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, we are doing Missing 411, but not everything's going to be connected. Not all of our some of them sure will be. We'll have some content definitely that relates back to it. But we're also branching things out and just trying things that are different.
Yeah, I think also content that relates back to Missing 411, it's not necessarily going to be like it was with Atlantis, where we're doing it week after week after week. We might do something Missing 411 related a few months from now. Basically, the way it's going to work is the story beneath is going to introduce a big subject, and then over time we're going to just do smaller aspects of that subject. We are working on the story beneath. We've kind of come to a halt because there's potential new relevant stuff coming out in the next couple days that might get factored in, so we're kind of waiting to see how that turns out. But yeah, we're gonna after Thanksgiving, we're starting back on it.
So get excited for some missing children.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what to expect going forward. We got lots of cool stuff planned. Just hang in there with us while we keep improving every single time we release a video, every single time we release a short. Do you guys have anything else that you want to add before we head out here today?
Please continue to leave comments and feedback. So we're going to try to do better at engaging with those things in the future.
All right, so follow us at Ch.13 Network. That's on the YouTubes, that's on the Instagram, that's on the TikToks. We're not on any other social media platforms, but if you think we should be, tell us, and then we'll go there for you, I guess. But, for now, Ch13 is signing off. We'll see you guys again soon.
Bye.
Oh, good, you're still here. Listen, Ch13 are a collection of independent content creators, which means we rely on your support. So if you like what we are doing here and you would like to see more content like this, then please like, subscribe, and comment. So let us know what we can do better. Let us know what kind of content you want to hear, because we cannot do this without you. Thanks for listening, guys.